At eRoad, we believe fleet management doesn't have to be problematic. It should be effortless, connected, and future-ready for your heavy-duty operation. With a reliable, accurate technology solution, you can elevate your fleet's performance, improve productivity across your business, monitor events as they happen, and reduce costs and downtime. Get on the road to better fleet management and safer, more productive operations. Go beyond the basics and visit eroad.com today.
Welcome back. It's loaded and rolling. I'm your host, Thomas Wasson, enterprise trucking carrier expert here at FreightWaves. And this is the first show of July. Well, yes, we did have a show the first week of July, but that was one of our pre-recorded ones from the future of supply chain in Atlanta. So gonna have a really fun talk today. Name of the game is workforce development. I've happened to be not only talking with people, but figuring out what's going on in the world of workforces. If you ask a lot of people, they will tell you things like the potential of job loss due to AI, growing concerns over an aging workforce, potential demographic collapse, and other doom and gloom. But dear listener, do not fret. We're here to dispel and dispense with myths. And at the end of the day, hopefully, we'll figure out that just simply trying to instill a good culture, training, and doing your job correctly as a business can have great outcomes in terms of employee and workforce development. Working on getting our guest in. We'll be talking a little later in the show with Jennifer Sheets. She's the founder and CEO of Master Staff Inc. I'm going to be having her on in a little bit, but I wanted to share some of my own personal experiences with workforce development, especially in trucking. Yours truly did come from trucking and operations, and so this is one of those situations where it's extremely important to get it right. Prior to that, I thought I was going to be in the Army. So there was a whole different thing in terms of the science of leadership, and it was a very fascinating thing. So let's go down memory lane real quick while we're waiting here. Yours truly did not get in the military, but graduated. He thought, well, I need to find a job. So I ended up in trucking as a dispatcher. And let me tell you what, it is an extremely stressful job. And there's not really a great way to prepare your average person for repeated calls. I mean, when I started as a dispatcher, we would just get our teeth kicked in. You were thinking like 300 trucks. So when you work at a mega carrier, 300 trucks, that's like just one of the dispatchers when you're in like a 5,000 truck fleet. And you're getting like 120 calls in a 12-hour shift, just getting your teeth kicked in, having angry driver conversations. And so, when we're developing the workforce, it's important to select and be able to identify and coach folks to dealing with these stressors and multitasking. So those were some of the big takeaways when I first started in this industry. And it can be really difficult because sometimes, it can be really easy to go to the dark side. You get the hate in one's heart. And so it's important to make sure that not only we're working on empowering leadership, but making sure they're aware of what's going on in their workforce and how to make it better. But don't take my word for it. We're going to be bringing on our guests, an expert in such things. And it's going to be Jennifer Sheets. Super excited to have her on the show. Jennifer, it was great getting to talk to you before you coming on the show. For those unaware, tell us about yourself.
I started my own staffing company almost 25 years ago, and in that time, we put over 37,000 people to work all over the United States and Canada. And that has just kind of evolved into like manufacturing supply chain has been kind of like our wheelhouse, and creating a show that we do and just gives a platform for people to talk about issues. And so it just kind of took off from there. But it's been a long time in coming being in this industry.
Well, being in the industry, you've seen a lot of the changes as well, like from when you started out to the present day. If you could look back and tell yourself starting out, what are the things that you'd want to pay attention to most, especially in the supply chain world?
The streamlining process that everybody in supply chain wants and needs and loves so much is fantastic for everything, but when you hire people, because The thing that we can't guarantee is human nature, or we'd be trillionaires, right? And everyone keeps trying to capture lightning in a bottle, but they try to streamline that componentry of their business into the supply chain. And it's where this labor shortage started, and all of the bottleneck that you're seeing now, the change in technology of AI replacing people, like all of the things that have happened has been the trajectory we've been taking from the time that I started my company, January 2000, to now.
And that's fascinating because it does feel like, if you exclude the pandemic, it was always as lean as possible because you wanted the tech to make up for it. And then if you didn't invest in the people once the pandemic hit, it just fell apart.
The thing of it is that the people of any company, no matter if it's one person, yeah, no matter if you're a line haul team, or no matter if it's a huge corporation, the backbone, the heartbeat, the lifeline are the people that make it happen, right? And I think why the big shift very quickly into AI and technology happened after the pandemic was because we kind of have to blame ourselves. So many people got real lazy. They didn't want to go back to work because they'd been tired of working so hard for so many years, and then they felt like they weren't getting anywhere, so they were just taking advantage of it. Well, companies still have to produce products, goods, and services and get them out, and they have to run somehow. So people just thought, well, you know what, either if I can't outsource it overseas, I'm going to find the technology and the AI to replace those positions that I have the hardest time filling. And that's really what happened.
And I'm kind of curious as well. It does feel like a whipsaw effect. There was a lot of job hopping during the pandemics, a lot of people bidding up, getting sky high incomes. And then now we see more participation. Was there ever something in the staffing world when you were in it? I'd heard from, to preface this, I'd heard from analysts that like, well, we just got to wait for their savings to run out and then labor force participation will go up. Is that even like a strategy when you're hiring people? Just like wait them out, see if they'll come back if the economy changes?
Well, what's really funny is that we already knew that we would see an influx of people applying for jobs when they thought their benefits would run out. I mean, that was a fact. And what was also happening was I was really on my soapbox during that time. I had 555 requisitions of positions in manufacturing and supply chain to fill that I could absolutely not fill. And some of them were upwards of six-figure positions because people just didn't want to go back to work. And so what happened was when the benefits were going to run out, they would be scrambling around, and then they just like disappear, and then they'd say, well, they filled the position already. They'd wait to communicate with us, and they'd fill the position already, and they go back and get their benefits again. I didn't wait like that. I was trying to be very proactive the whole time, and I think anybody that was sitting around waiting for that, I'm sorry, but I think it was like lazy recruiting. I think it was people that did not understand how you had to actually go back to old school ways, like I used to have to do in the early 2000s, when we didn't have all this technology at our fingertips to help us find the heartbeat of our companies. And I think that what ended up happening is we thought this was the norm and we settled for it. And when you settle for it, this is where you end up.
What were the good old school ways of recruiting? Because I think that's fascinating. I've spoken with people, and it does feel like there's this weird air that, like, well, everything's changed because technology and automation. And, what are the fundamentals that these folks are forgetting from your experience?
How about pick up a phone or do your due diligence or actually speak to someone in the process? Because I'm actually going to do some videos about this, because I'm gonna take my industry to task. I am like literally going to call them out on this, because there are so many companies right now that just keep running job descriptions, and then they put their job descriptions, either they're the perfect job description like in utopia, if that's what that person did every day, all the time and experienced, and it can't possibly offer up change like a when there's a variance or something because it's stuck. So they post that out there. They run it through Chat GPT. But then you have people trying to do a resume and they're running it through Chat GPT, right? So we're making machines with keywords and ones and zeros decide who's qualified, and we're not even really talking to them. It's taking an act of Congress to get someone hired. It's taking 4 weeks to 6 weeks. And I saw a statistic the other day that said a really great recruiter should have 4 hires in a month. Let me tell you something. If I did 4 hires in a month when I started my company, I would have been out of business in the first 5 months I was there. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Going back to old school, you have to talk to people, you have to take them through the whole process of onboarding, and you have to have people ready to go in case it doesn't work out. It's also understanding your client. I mean, everything's different. I mean, you know this as well as I do. You could have 10 facilities across the country. Each one of them has a different culture, different dynamic. Maybe one's near a railroad track, one's near, school, a bus line, one's not near a bus line. One people want their summers off, others want to work them. Like it's just a different dynamic, and there's no way that you can have that technology take accountability for that. So when we just let the computer do it, you're a glorified admin person. You are not a true recruiter.
And I'm curious about this. I've heard this from recruiting for truck drivers. The ghosting rate was once around like 20 to 30%. It's upwards of over 1 in 2 after you send the offer don't show up. Is there a change where we have bots talking to bots? Is that the fear without having the fundamentals that you're just going to get ghosted as well?
That's exactly what's happening. And this is where I don't know if you know this or not, but 70% of all hires, especially in the trucking and line haul business, are lost before they even get to the point. And this is after you put them for, like, let's say you do FedEx routes, you put them through First Advantage or whatever. But by the time you get them through that process and you're ready to offer them a job, they've already gotten offered something else or they're disinterested. So much of that is because we're not communicating with that individual through the entire process. And that's the biggest problem right now, is that we've lost that touch of communicating. If I'm a driver, for example, I'm out there driving, that's what I do. So stopping and going through all of this is a pain in my butt. Right. I don't want to have to do it. And if somebody can take me along the way and tell me what I need to know and cut through all of that, I can get to the process faster and get hired. But that's what happens. And you can't just throw money at it anymore, because especially if you're one of those that are bidding on routes for various companies, because everyone's going to be paying about the same when it comes to that. So you better offer something else.
I think that's fascinating because I remember the FedEx. We in the trucking side, we also would bid for the routes and we'd use our drivers and stuff. So if I'd have a very big challenge if, let's say, I won a route and I want to be like one of those little companies. I got to find the right drivers, but if I have the wrong approach and I don't even specify like what kind of company I am, is that something you're seeing a lot as well? Because I noticed that, like, even if I look up job descriptions now, it does feel like it's made by GPT. I don't even know what the vibe of the company is. It just feels so interpersonal, impersonal. I think that's the word.
Yeah, no, you're right, because we've lost who our audience is, plain and simple. I mean, there are so many things in supply chain, let's say, that will benefit from AI and technology, like inventory management, just in time, like all those things that improve with all of that. Compliance improves with that. But the one thing that's not going to improve with that is how we speak to someone about what we believe in. If I'm telling why I'm in this business and how I take care of people and what the goal is and what I see for us, that makes a huge difference in someone wanting to spend their time driving for me or somebody else, or working as an ops manager or P&D or something like that. So it does make a difference, the communication that we have with people, and we have to remember who our audience is. Okay, these are people that are on the road all the time. If you're talking about drivers specifically, which we were, and you've got to have that human touch with them. I mean, they're always in a truck. They're not talking to people all day long most of the time. I mean, it's nice to kind of take them through these steps and help them out. But I just think that they have to believe in what you're doing, and we get asked that quite a bit when we're recruiting for people. They're like, "Well, what's with the company? Why are they looking? What happened to the drivers before that? What's going on with the route? Are they about to lose the route? Like, what is the deal?" So it's a big decision for people to make.
And looking for recruiting also kind of reminds you have to market. You're marketing yourself. You're going through different channels. If I want to find the drivers and the workers across all these platforms, Instagram, Twitter, formerly X, TikTok, LinkedIn, where do you even go nowadays? Or Indeed, is there a specific area, or do you have to like cast a wide net when you just try to even find people to get that message out? Hey, I got a job.
It's a great question, because it's not what you know, it's who you know. And this is what we have found is so much, even when we started in this industry, like really heavy doing line haul drivers about 3 or 4 years ago. And, you get all your platforms, everybody's on that, right? And it's very impersonal. It takes a long time to get where you need to get. And then what companies think is, oh, I'm just paying this fee and I'm posting my job. Well, just for example, like Indeed has like a thing on it where it's like at least a minimum of $1,000 that you have to spend on the job posting. When you click on it, whether they're a valid candidate or not, you get charged again. If they apply, they get charged again. They may not be the right candidate. And this goes through a lot of platforms that are like that. You don't even realize you're leaking expenses until you really sit there with no butts in the seats, is really what happens. And so, for us, our thing is the touch. Get out there, network, belong to groups that are boots on the ground, and get to know people. And honestly, that is what HR recruiting actually is. It's not glorified admin assistant. And I can't say that enough. And that complacency has made us okay with that. And now you see, like, I don't know if anybody knows, but the IRU had a report that the driver shortage that's going to happen by 2028 is going to be 7 million positions. Okay. And so we think we're keeping up right now, but we're not even close to keeping up. And so we have to figure something out before that happens, because we're not going to have, autonomous trucks by 2028. So we got to figure something out.
It was fascinating, especially with shortages. Depending upon who you ask, some people will dispute it or not. But I feel there's a shortage of qualified individuals, and finding those qualified individuals.
1000%.
I hear it. It's like, yeah, there's drivers, but then I hear that they don't even know a basic functionality of a logbook, or they don't even know the basic functionalities of a job. If I'm wanting to recruit people, I feel like that's such a big challenge. Is if you don't do it the right way, you can attract these people who tell you on their resume, "Oh yeah, I've got it," and then you put them in the seat and they can't operate. Is that another big challenge? Is like, I know the aging workforce and trying to teach them, but do you have to like put extra work in the retraining efforts, or can you catch that out front and weed it out?
I think the key is when you hire really great firms to partner with. Lots of times, I mean, there's so many. I mean, you can have your own recruiting individual out there, but the thing of it is you have to understand from a driver's perspective. Anybody that's worth their salt is going to find out, like from whatever kind, like for all of our companies, let's say that we're working with. I know what kind of routes they run. I know who their clients are. I know the frustrations of the drivers that are currently there, what they wish that they had, and those are the candid conversations that you have to have when you take the time to speak with someone up front. And one of the other biggest misconceptions that happens with drivers is when we don't tell them, exactly what's happened, even the cruddy part of the job. Like let's say they have a route where they have a blind back and that's off a cliff to like, a distillery or something like that. Maybe someone's really skittish about that. Maybe that's something someone doesn't want to do. Don't you think that that's kind of important if it's that one, drop that they do and pickup that they do that causes that turnover in that particular role? So that's what I'm saying. Like you have to be more than an administrative assistant when it comes to that, and you've got to ask the right questions to the current teams that you have so that you can actually recruit the best people to bring in and retain.
It's such a fascinating thing because I didn't understand the silos, trucking especially. I do think the reality of the work itself. Is this something where, talk about maybe paying drivers more or not? Is that one of the big challenges? Is just being upfront with the actual quality of the work? Because some folks have said that it's really a labor and quality of life issue where the job is just so rough that people don't want to stick around, and so maybe you have to like raise wages or figure something out.
Yeah, and with the raise in wages is never going to happen with ones that are stuck in, like if you, let's say you're in a FedEx route and you're bidding because everyone's going to run like the 70 to 75 cents a mile for teams. And, so like it's going to come into that little range and you're not going to really be able to offer much. So what do you have? Yeah, it's the quality of the job. It's understanding what that job is and what kind of runs we're talking about. We're talking city runs. Is it a combination? Do I have to get out and load and unload my own truck? That's like the big no-no. Lots of times with drivers, they don't want to have to do that. Or I've had where people complaining about how they're sitting because the warehouses and the logistics centers at the distribution centers that they're at, they're short workers. And so they have to wait till their truck gets offloaded or loaded up and they're in line wait, and it just stalls them for hours on end. So yeah, it does make a difference. You have to understand what's going on in the company that you're supporting in order to find the right people to be in it and be supportive in it.
I've heard it's hard with warehouses. I spoke to a person like a year or two ago, and they said an interesting thing with COVID, like you talked about the stimulus money and people getting the benefits, was that you had this weird quasi hobo worker who would just work a little bit in the warehouse, live in like an RV, dip out, work again when they felt like it, like a transactional nature. Is there any big changes in the warehousing? Because you hit a nail on the head. Why is my truck late or waiting? Because there's no one to load it or unload it.
So when they talk about the big pain points in supply chain right now, one of them is in the logistics warehouse distribution center. And you've got this like challenging thing. You've got warehouses wanting to roboticize and not have to worry and rely on people, but then you have the infrastructure cost that goes into that, the maintenance, the people that have to run that. And then you've got that whole transitional period. And there are people like that, they're the transient workers. When COVID happened, it showed people that the one good thing about it was it kind of took people back to quality of life and family and friends and what are we really doing when we're scrambling around like chickens with their head cut off. But the other part of it that happened was that companies looked at positions going, if I can't get them filled, I'm going to find something to take the place of it because these products and goods have to get out to the public. And so that's what happened. And so, yeah, there are people that do that. And one of the things I have found recently is that companies get so used to, like, especially if they outsource to a company like my company's master staff. So if they outsource to me for distribution center, that's great. But if they're outsourcing to whenever I'm working with them, it seems like they have like 20 companies they're outsourcing to. There's a challenge with that because you're either competing against their HR department for the same people at usually a lower to like an entry level to mid rate, or you're competing against like 10 other staffing agencies along with the HR department to find the people, and it's just a mess. Or you get someone from the high up that says you have to use this one type of staffing company to be able to hire everybody in your logistics center, and they may not be capable of it. They may not have the team. They turn over a lot. So what's the answer to that? I think that it's collaborative and partnerships that have to start from the top, and it's actually trying to figure out what's going on in the facility itself. You need to have people doing intake from the partners that you use, and you need to not trip over them. For example, like if I hire someone to do shipping and receiving, I shouldn't be out doing shipping and receiving. Let them do their thing so I can work on what makes us the money that we need to and makes us profitable. And I think that's where that blockchain thing has to kind of stop, like that streamlining thing. We have to, carve that out, because that's why we have such an issue with labor right now.
And that blows my mind. It reminds me, it's crazy that the shippers and the warehouses use a collection of carriers to satiate their demand. But when you're hiring the staff, HR, internal, and then external firms, you have to compete against them as well. So it's almost like all the way up the chain, you have this crazy decentralized network of just trying to meet this need.
So one of our companies that we work with is in cold storage, and one of their locations, we just happened to notice this the other day, and they don't ask for very many people, like, 6 people or something like that, like reach lift drivers. Here we notice there's 20 staffing agencies on this list. Plus they have been posting their own jobs on Indeed and everything. And then what happens is, so you put people into the mix for it, and then you're competing against everybody else. You may get a hire, you may not. There's never a guarantee whether they brought them in or a competitor did, or you, if that person's going to stay, right? Like I said, you can't guarantee human nature. We'd be trillionaires. So now how much time, money, effort has been wasted by everybody, and you still don't have a butt in the seat driving the reach lift pulling orders. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, that it is actually madness how they look at manpower, woman power, however you want to put it, labor, whatever you want to say, workforce, however it's looked at from the top to the bottom. I just think strategically it's wrong, and it's a leaky boat. It's leaking, and the boat is going to eventually sink, because you're going to find yourself where you're not getting products and goods out.
And it hits the bottom line. Switching gears a little bit here, we got about 4 minutes left. You do a radio show as well, talking about these topics and what's going on. Tell us a little bit about it. Is there any highlights or stuff that listeners should check out, and where's it at?
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much. Yes. So I have a show called Master the Workforce. It also goes up to a podcast on all the platforms on Spotify. It airs from 11 a.m. to noon Central Time every Sunday on 99.7 WTN. Well, we broadcast from downtown Nashville live off of Music Row every Sunday, but we live stream across the world when you log in. And basically, this is what we talk about. It's what we spend 70% of our lives doing, and that's working, no matter how that looks for somebody, whether the driver or the CEO, it doesn't matter. We're talking about issues, hot topics, having guests on and delving into it. And we talk about supply chain a lot. I probably have 75 podcasts in the can, and you can go back through and see some of the people that we've had on, some of the industries, what we talk about. And it's just such a great perspective to get people, having some dialogue about it, so we can actually not have problems, but have solutions to them.
Most coolest, interesting, or biggest surprise for that? Because I'm looking at the what you all work on, distribution, packaging, sorting, supply chain, everywhere. Was there any of them that kind of stand out if folks want to look at it on demand?
Yeah, absolutely. We had on a gentleman from a company. It's like, in fact, they're one manufacturing plant that's out of Bowling Green, Kentucky, has over 5,000 employees, and they make brake parts for semi trucks. One of the most fascinating, interesting things was we got to talking about how California had come out and said that we need to be, electric semi trucks by like 2042 or 48. I know someone might take me to task on the year, but somewhere in there. But this is what he said. He goes, I wish that they would have people that were drivers from manufacturing suppliers that build these semi trucks come and talk, because right now he said the R&D spend in this industry is absolutely massive, because right now they don't have a braking system in the country, in the world, that can stop a semi truck based off of just electricity. So he said it's going to careen off a cliff and kill like a family of 5. So he says we have to catch up when we're making these decisions on where our technology is at. And he said we're all scrambling trying to find a brake part that'll stop a loaded semi.
It's always the little things. It's definitely. I feel like it, with the brakes, that's the one thing you don't even think about because the drivetrain, even the tires are completely different. Got a little bit of time left here as well. I'm thinking about the biggest thing, especially with AI and automation. If you had with a minute to tell any leader or listener what you should think about automation, any specific thing in regards to how you need to pair it with your people. I know it's a minute. What would you say?
If it's a minute, controlled growth. How about that? Make sure that what you're doing isn't just to keep up with everybody and keeping up with the Joneses disease and technology, and make sure it makes sense. Train your staff. Maybe instead of hiring more people, you take the people you have and train them up in a new skill set so they can manage the technologies that you're going to bring in that you think are going to streamline. But be careful in doing that because you're being subservient to technology in a way. There has to be like a balance, and that just makes sure that you don't want the upside down, which is what's happening right now because of now 575 million jobs are going to be automated in the next 5 years. And there's not going to be 575 million new technology jobs to support it because the whole idea of technology is to make it so it's leaner, meaner, and not take as much manpower. So you need to think about that as you grow. Make sure you take that in consideration and put a plan together to make it a strategic, controlled growth.
Food for thought. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on the show. Looking forward to catching up with you soon.
I am too with you. I can't wait for you to join me on my show. I'm excited about it.
Will
Thanks
do.
so much, Thomas.
Thank you. Check them out. It is wonderful folks at Master Staff Inc. out of Nashville. Great people. That's it for this episode. But don't worry if you're just joining us on demand, Apple, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you may find your content needs. We have a newsletter coming out Thursdays, 2 p.m. Eastern as well. That's a wrap for this episode. Thank you all so much for listening. Join us next week. We'll do it live.